Okay.
Good
Hi, everybody.
morning.
Hey, good morning, Carol. Good morning, everybody. We still have a couple minutes, so we're not going to get started just yet.
Good morning. We need some more light, Bill.
I know, I do.
You got all darky face there. We won't be able to tell if you're crying, laughing, smiling.
Maybe that's the idea. Hiding my beard, though, that's unacceptable. I'm in a hotel lobby, so I don't have a whole lot of options.
What are you doing in a hotel?
I'm at a conference. I'm at the Jack Canfield One Day to Greatness seminar here in Phoenix.
Oh.
So just kind of snuck out and going to do our breakfast club.
Good. Did you eat breakfast?
I have not eaten. It'd pretty much be lunch for me now. I've been up for so long, and I am starving. So
you know what I love?
What?
Kindness bars. The Kind bars.
Oh, Kind bars, yeah.
Oh, they're good.
They are.
They're my breakfast most of the time.
Oh.
Hi, Laura.
Oh, hey, Laura. How's it going?
And Judy.
See half your head down there.
Valerie.
All right, guys, that puts us right at 9 o'clock. Carol, you ready to get started?
Yeah, but it's over now. 9 o'clock. I came at 8.
Did you? Oh, it's 8 o'clock your time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the time zone thing is really throwing us through a loop. I'm going to mute everybody again, and that includes you, Carol, so you'll have to unmute. So, welcome, guys, to the... Sorry, sliding glass doors there. Welcome to the November 13th edition of the Breakfast Club with Carol Ray, founder of Notary2Pro, Notary Training Course, and myself. My name is Bill Soroka. I'm the founder of Notary Coach and the Sign and Thrive Notary Course and Community. We're real excited to bring these Breakfast Clubs to you where we talk about exactly what you have questions about in your notary business and your loan signing business. So we're going to jump right into it, Carol. We have got a ton of questions that people have been submitting. Plus, we've got some rollover from the previous weeks where we didn't get to them. So we're going to jump in right where we finished last time. And I promised Harold that we would continue with his questions. It just happened to be that we stopped in the middle of his. So I'm going to share my screen here with you and jump right in again. And we'll do the slideshow.
Oh, great. I can't believe this. My internet quit.
Oh, you're still on. We can hear you.
Really?
Yeah. All right, Carol, can you see me? Can you see our screen?
Yeah, I can. I can see you. Okay.
Beautiful.
No, it said my internet was gone.
Oh, unstable?
But then this happened. Okay.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back actually just a few more screens here because he had a couple of other questions. And I know we kind of talked about this last week with one of the other questions, but I know this is just one of those constant questions that will always be. So let's talk about this. It says, when approaching escrow agents directly, what is the best way to make first contact? Is that email, phone, or just dropping in? Carol, I'll let you, if you don't mind, kind of start with your own philosophy on this one.
Yeah, this is really kind of an iffy thing. Honestly, if you get them by phone, you're always going to get them when they're busy. Emails, probably disregard them. I always think that the best way to get in touch with anybody that you want to meet with and talk to, well, the first thing is you've got to get through the door. You've got to get through that receptionist, that person that's kind of the gatekeeper. That's the first thing you probably have to do. And then I would say you always try to go into an office. If you're going into a title company or an escrow company, you want to get in touch with the manager. That's who you really want to talk to. And if you can get past the gatekeeper, you've got a good chance of just meeting, having somebody come out, just say, I just want to just talk to her for just a moment if she has some time. If not, let me know when I can come back. And then I'm losing my voice, so. But to me, that's just always the best way to do it, just to get right up in there and tell them who you are and get to know them a little bit, spend just a few minutes considering how busy they probably are. That's the way I approach things. I always like doing things in person as opposed to, being impersonal.
And in many ways, I completely agree. The thing is, and I'll kind of go through each of these because here's the reality. Everything works on one level or another. It's a human being that you're connecting with, so they're going to have their own preferences. Dropping in, actually, there's lots of success stories. It's the most uncomfortable for me, and I get feedback from some escrow companies. Some love it, some do not. So you kind of have to feel it out. But if you are going to do the drop-in, there's a couple of things that I would recommend. Number one, do not drop in the last week of the month.
Never.
Too busy, and you're just going to be an inconvenience. Nobody's going to have time for you, and they might get irritated enough to where they would never see you again. If you don't understand the business enough, not to walk in at the last week in a month. The other thing is, I recommend going a little deeper level than what most people do. Most people do just pop in. They might bring donuts. They might bring some kind of treat or card, which is awesome and great, and it can work. But when you do a little bit of research about who's working in that office, who's in what role, and maybe you know an initiative that the company just took on, or if they've opened a new branch, or if they've purchased another division or another company, if you're schooled in where they're going and you can speak to that, even just one line can change everything. So do the part that nobody else wants to do. Nobody else wants to take the time to do the research ahead of time. Do a little bit of research so you can walk in there and be educated. I recommend the same thing when you're using email and phone as well. Do some research. Put in the time on the front end so you don't have to worry about it on the back end. It pays for itself because you'll do less calls. You're going to have, if you do enough research, you can send the correct email or make the correct phone call and say the one thing to the right person that changes everything. So instead of having to market to hundreds, you're only marketing to dozens, if that. When I first started this business, I had my Fab 100 list, but I had more clients than I could handle before I even got through the first 20 because I took time and I researched them and put it together.
Yeah, one of the things I'll add very quickly to that was some stuff I was involved in the early days, and that was some of the builders, local builders. If you can find out who the local builders are using for title, I can tell you that those escrow officers, that escrow department, is so busy at times. They're just dying for people to help them out. Because when these things close out, when you close out a whole neighborhood, you're talking about an entire street. Could be, two sides of a whole block that's closing at one time because those permits are issued, and then all of a sudden the docs are ready, and it's overwhelming. And so that's a good thought. Do your research, but that's one of the ways to find out some really busy escrow companies.
Yeah, definitely. And it's no secret that that's how I built my business was through builders in the Phoenix area. I put them on a list. I researched which title companies were working with which builder. And by the way, this is going to come up a little later. There's another builder question, so I want to dive in a little bit here. There are some builders that either own their own title companies or they have very close relationships with title companies. By doing a little bit of research, you can figure all of that out before you approach. And I know, let's speak to this right now because there's a question coming up like how to connect with builders. Should I go to the sales office at the builders? Should I connect with the builder side? And for me, the builder side is great. It's great to develop a relationship. Any relationship can help, but you have to always remember who your ideal customer is. And when you're a loan signing agent, your ideal customer is the closing agents. Whether they're working for a builder, whether they're working for a lender, whoever they're working for, they're the ones that ultimately get to make the decision about which signing agents they're going to use. So those are the relationships that you want to cultivate. Anything else on that one, Carol?
No, the only thing is that I do believe too that going directly to the sales managers, the people that really coordinate everything for the builders, is a big deal. If you can get in with one of the sales managers.
Yeah, I agree, because they have influence over other people. Guys, any relationship can possibly benefit you. That's why I always ask you to keep the big picture in mind.
They're kind of nasty people, though. Some are very controlling and very tense. They have big jobs and there are a lot of responsibilities, and they're really difficult to deal with.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the sales managers, even the escrow officers in builders specifically, I mean, it's already a stressful job. But in the builder department, you have a margin of error that's like zero. I mean, these things, they're getting docs at 10 a.m. and they have to close at noon so that thing can get funded and recorded that day. So, and if you make a mistake, or if they make a mistake, or if anybody makes a mistake, it jams up people's lives. So when you can speak to the problems that they have, the problem that they have is the sense of urgency. You have to have thick skin. You're working in an office where people are, they're freaking out. So you have to have thick skin and let things roll off your back. You have to have attention to detail. You just have to be able to put your head down and do it. When you can start to speak to that in your initial conversation, so it looks like you understand what they're going through and how you can help, that's going to get you in the door.
Well, I can tell you, when I was working with a builder as an escrow officer in Santa Monica, California, when I left there, which was an average, I had 320 open escrows at one time.
Yeah.
Most escrow officers have 50, 60, maybe if they're good.
Well, 60, yeah, if they're top performers. But I think, wouldn't you say the majority of them are 30 or less per month?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As I moved on, I had the more normal 60, 70, open escrows. But back then when I was working with the builder, 320 when I left that company.
That's a crap load of business.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to Harold's next question, which is perfect in alignment with this. What information should I prepare to deliver to the escrow agent upon first contact?
You asking me?
Well, both of us. You want me to go first?
Experience. I mean, why are you interested in their particular business? Connect with them with the understanding that you understand how busy they are. And just let them know what you're capable of and what kind of services you can offer to them. I mentioned this before, that one of the things that I did, my husband swears I was the first mobile notary anywhere, because this was in the early 80s, I used to go to the model homes and I would just set up appointments, maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 appointments, and let the people go to where they were purchasing the home rather than driving all the way where I was. And they would set up a nice printer, copy machine for me, have FedEx there at 6 or 6:30 in the evening to pick up docs. And I would spend my day just doing nothing but signing documents for people that were moving into that area so they could do the walkthroughs, the final, all the final process of it, sign their documents. The builders loved it. And so if you come up with things like this that are going to make their job easier, and you can deliver more than somebody else would be willing to, that's what to do as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So again, it's all about value, what you bring to the table. And again, I'm going to go right back to what I said before. It's, these guys are used to people getting solicited by people who are constantly talking about themselves. Look how great I am. This is what I can do for you. And most of them are saying the exact same thing. So if you can't find a way to cut through that clutter that way, go another direction. Do the research up front. Talk about them instead. We have their entire lives are available at your fingertips. You have Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have Google. You can figure out what they're doing, what projects they're working on, what awards are they getting, what promotions are they getting. Are they involved in the community? Maybe there's something that connects to you. Maybe you work with kids and you love kids. That's where you're going to want to start. You want to go deeper than what most people are and get to them. They're just like you. I mean, we want to talk about ourselves. They want to talk about themselves. They want to feel appreciated. Give them an avenue for that. Like, treat them like a friend, not necessarily just a business contact and a source of revenue for you. And that changes everything. Now,
isn't that the way that we should be with everyone, though?
It is, but it's really easy to put people in categories. And I mentioned this last week, we're used to this industrial age where you just you get up and you go to work at a job that you're miserable at. You don't show any personality. You just do what you have to do to get through it. We're in a position where we can let all that go. We can be who we are, who we want to be in this business, and let yourself shine through. This is your chance to do that. And your clients are craving that too, the realness. They don't want somebody who's fake in all business and never fun and never shares a little bit about them or asks about what's going on in their lives or cares about what's going on in their lives. That's the kind of connection people are craving, and you have the chance to deliver it right here. Mm-hmm. Now, to talk specifically about marketing materials, I know this is the whole wide range of whatever you're comfortable or wherever your talents are. When I first started, though, it was literally 2 or 3 lined emails. When you're going to send an email, do not write a history of Bill Soroka and send it over. They're never going to read it. You really want to do your research. Just do 2 or 3 sentences to get the point across, and then schedule the follow-up, guys. The follow-up is everything. I keep saying it, the fortune's in the follow-up. One email is not going to do the trick. It's probably going to take 7 to 20 different types of connections to get your foot in the door on some of these. Maybe more, maybe less in some of them. But you've got to schedule your follow-ups. Does absolutely no good. They get thousands of emails a day in some cases. If you just do one and walk away, you're just going to get lost in the shuffle. They're looking for long-term commitment and relationships too. With your marketing pieces, you can create beautiful marketing pieces if you have a skill development or the talent to do so, or if you have the budget to do so. However, the only thing I've ever had any escrow officer ever ask me for, after they've seen my personality and they've already decided they want to work with me, it's great. Can you send your rate sheet over? So if you're going to invest in anything, create a beautiful rate sheet, super simple rate sheet. Don't do like these signing companies guys do where it's like, oh, I'm going to charge you $10 if it's 66 pages instead of 65 pages. And I'm going to, if it's 0.7 miles outside my range, I'm going to upcharge for this, upcharge for that. You are free to do anything you want, of course, but I'm telling you from the escrow perspective, they are looking for the simplest measure. And if they have to read and decipher your price sheet, it's not going to happen. Keep it simple. This is a great question, Carol. I get this a lot. Is it worth the time and possibly the money to get any other certifications more than the NNA, like the 1, 2, 3 Notary Elite certification, etc.? You want to take this one?
I don't know if I'm the right one to do that. I do believe that the NNA certification is something that's really required. This really came about in the after 2013 when the NNA became involved with the SPW, the Signing Professionals Work Group, and they set certain criteria, code of conduct, that kind of thing. And the industry, because the NNA has been around such a long time, they have accepted that as kind of the standard. I think I mentioned last time that what we're doing is we're sending our graduates to get their background screening from the NNA, because with that $65 expenditure, they're able to get an exam. And when they pass that exam, which has little to do with notary, it has everything to do with SBW, they get certified for the year. And that certification goes a long way. Most companies will accept that. I think the 123 Notary Elite certification, not so much. I think actually Jeremy Bellamy, the owner, came out a few years ago, and he did say that the only certification that he would accept and certify people was Notary2Pro. Since then, he's kind of backed down on that a little bit, but that was the only one that he would accept for a couple of years. I think that if they get the NNA certification and find whatever education suits them by doing a lot of research, that should be good enough. Ours is absolutely accepted nationwide, our certification.
Good. So when I hear a question like this, I go back to the motivation behind the certification, behind the reason you're getting it. And what we have to do is we have to cut through the BS, because there's a lot of companies out there. Some of them are outright scams. Some of them are legitimate businesses that are selling a product that almost make you believe, especially when you're new and it's brand new, and you're not sure what to do, and they have similar names to the NNA, and it's kind of a cluster out there. So if you're getting a certification because someone's telling you that with that certification you will make more money and get more business instantly, then you really have to question it. It may or may not be true. It's usually not. I don't recommend you ever get a certification only to make more money. If you're going to get a certification, it's because you are trying to advance your business and advance your knowledge, which I'm a huge proponent of. I greatly believe that all the certifications, all the training that you can get, if it's in your budget and it makes sense for you, then do it. But don't get it because you think it's going to be a light switch to an onslaught of business. And don't let somebody try to convince you of that. When it comes to NNA certification, you know how I feel on this. I think it's a great disappointment to the industry on the actual certification part, because it doesn't have anything to do with how to do the business correctly or build a business with it. So the entire industry is relying on that certification. And when you pass it, you're still like, what do I do? How do I do now? Loan signing. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how trainings like this come. Now, the NNA serves an amazing purpose, and we're going to talk about that a little later on in this call too, but it has some weaknesses like all of us do. This certification, to clarify as well, you'll see it in the forums all the time. This NNA certification is not required. Don't let anybody ever tell you it is. They're right. It's technically not required. But if you want to sign with signing companies, you've got to have this. You've got to have this NNA certification. That's what they're looking for. And luckily, there are courses like Notary2Pro and a few others where if you get their certification, they might take it. But if you get the NNA certification, it's kind of across the board. That's the certification they're looking for. And it does come with that criminal background check and the listing on signingagent.com, which is actually valuable. Signing companies and escrow officers use that database to find local signing agents.
What I'm really excited about is that we kind of work things out with the NNA. For our graduates, they are now allowing our graduates to put a link in their profile showing that they are Notary2Pro graduates, which I'm very
awesome.
Proud of. But Bill, you and I, we connected for a reason. And I don't know how you feel about this, but all I do is when people are calling, and we get calls all the time, what are we about? What do we do? Who we are. And I tell people, do your research. Go to our websites. Take a look at the testimonials. I have testimonials on there from real students who will accept phone calls and emails from potential students. They're not even allowed to have a testimonial on our website unless they're real. Go to LinkedIn. Check our profiles out. See how many recommendations that we have. It's so important to make sure that they're not making false promises to you, drawing you in because they're telling you that you're just going to make a lot of money. We end up taking those students who are so disappointed because no, they didn't get to that in the first 6 months. But you and I connected with Bill because I felt something very real. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I love Bill. I think that he's honest and he's kind. He knows what he's doing. He's smart. And the advice that he gives you is great. We really, really communicate well, and we work well together, and we complement each other, I think. But there's so many people crawling out of the woodwork now, and you've got to be very careful. If there's any newbies out there, I don't know who's watching, but be so careful. If you see ads in Indeed, Monster, Glassdoor, that say, we have 100 companies right in your neighborhood that need you to help with loan signings. Become a notary loan signing agent. And then you call them and they say, yeah, we've got all this work for you, but you'll have to sign up, take our course to get certified. That's the only way they'll accept you. The last one was the NNA, National Notary of America. And they didn't even know it was going on until I called them. And then they kind of blew me off until a week later, I got a phone call from the communications director over there. And he said, oh my goodness, we just got 9 phone calls yesterday from people who thought they were going to the National Notary Association, paid out a whole bunch of money and didn't get anything. And I've got FBI and everybody out there looking, and I know who they are. They're felons. I've got his mugshot and the whole thing. They can't catch them. They've been slipping around since 2013.
Well, and those types of companies are definitely out there, but you have amazing support, guys. Just even between Carol and I and our respective students in our courses, this is the most supportive group you will ever find on the internet, I think, no matter what your industry is. So if you come across something that doesn't look right, send us an email, pick up the phone and give us a call, send me a text, whatever it is, and we can kind of guide you through it. And the other thing to end on that one is trust your gut. I think no matter what you come across, you kind of feel if somebody gives you the skeevies, it's probably going to carry on to the course. It's going to carry on to the business relationship down the road. Don't do it. If you feel good about something, jump in. If you don't, then don't. That's really what it comes down to. And research, although it can be overwhelming, is really the way to educate yourself and figure it out. Come up with 3 or 4 options and then reach out and get some advice. What's nice is if somebody has integrity, they're going to tell you the way it really is, not the way you want it to hear. So that's what you're going to be looking for, is just that integrity. You don't want to be sold something. You just want some good advice, and then you make the best decision for yourself.
And I love the fact that you're telling people to go with your gut. That to me is, I've learned my 75, almost 76 years. That tells you everything. If you truly follow your instincts, you can't go wrong.
Yep, absolutely agree. All right, next question. This is interesting too. I don't know if we talked about this last week or not. I was called by a signing company that received my documents, and they said they were all smudgy and not clear, and that title was upset and would not accept them. And it goes on to say, I was in awe because when I sent the documents, they were not that way. How should I handle this? Any advice on that, Carol?
Things happen, and sometimes we just don't have any control over it. Don't argue with them. It's not worth it. Just do what you need to do. Resend, deliver, do whatever you have to do to make sure that they have what they need. It's unfortunately, I've said this before. I even talked about a grant deed that wasn't there, that they said I didn't get signed. This is going to happen a lot. you are going to get some of the strangest things. I had one, it's a long story. I'll make it really short. We went out to a VIP signing. They had 3 different properties, 3 different loans. People were flying were they going to Europe? Yeah. And so we get out there, we go through one package at a time, get everything signed. I double check, Bill double checked. We put them into the FedEx envelopes. We, on the way home, dropped everything off the FedEx envelope, and we get a call that one of them, they opened up the package and there was only half the documents in it. And it was a long way away. I was like, what are you talking about? We sat there, we closed it. I even take duct tape around the edges of my FedEx envelopes. There's no way. Long time later on, I found out from somebody at that title company that the receptionist spilled her coffee on the package.
Oh, wow.
And she threw out the documents, half of the package. We ended up driving back in a huge hurry, 50 miles, to catch these people on the day that they were getting on their plane to leave, and took care of it and got it, done and reset. But it was like, it's like you go to the end of the rainbow and there's no pot of gold there. Why not?
Yeah. That, and you're right, Carol, this kind of weird stuff happens all the time. If you want to differentiate yourself, if you want to separate from the herd, you own 100% of the responsibility for those documents. Even if you just know there's no way that wasn't me. If you argue with your client, you are going to lose your client.
Yeah.
So keep the big picture in mind. And then if they're out of line and it keeps happening, that's probably a client you don't want to work with, because somebody needs to get their shit together. Because they're losing stuff, they don't have a system, and they're looking to blame people. That's not a win-win, guys. You can fire clients all the time. I do it a lot. So, but if it's just every now and then something goes wrong, clean it up, make it right. Keep the big picture in mind. It's not about $150. It's about $100,000 a year sometimes. So you don't want to ruin a relationship because you want to, let your ego get in the way about you never making a mistake. It's hard. It's hard to swallow that pill sometimes, but that's how you're going to make this business work for you.
Well, I teach my students always the same thing. When you do make a mistake, you have to be gracious, accept the responsibility, and get up off your butt and go fix it now.
Yep,
because
exactly.
That is what this company is going to remember. They are not going to remember the mistake that you made. And I'm talking about a mistake that you actually did make. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to behave. You've got to take responsibility and go fix it. Because we're all humans. We make mistakes. When I make a mistake, and I've made plenty of mistakes, my husband will tell you I'm a basket case. But I've always made the practice of getting up, getting it fixed, and I've been good.
Mistakes will happen, guys. They know it will, and most escrow officers are really cool about it. But how you react to it changes everything. So my policy: drop everything and fix it.
That's right.
No matter what you're doing, do not say, "Oh, I gotta get my kids. I gotta pick up my kids. I can't do it, or I'm leaving town." You figure it out. This is where you become MacGyver and figure it out and get that fixed.
And there are people who won't do it. I had friends that owned signing services over the years, and sometimes I would jump in. Oh, I got a dentist appointment. Carol, do you mind, doing a little scheduling? And oh, sure, no problem. And I would call people. I remember one woman, honest to goodness, I called her and I said that you didn't get the grant deed signed or notarized. And we need you to go back there and, and I was nice. That was no problem, just go back and take care of it. She says, I would never do that. Absolutely refused and hung up on me. She would not admit that it was her that did it. And it caused a huge problem for the signing service.
That's probably not a signing agent that's in business anymore.
No.
All right, let's move on. At what stage in your business would you suggest is a good time to apply for a business entity? I think we talked about this.
We did
last week. Yeah. So again, guys, a business entity it could be state specific. It could be situation specific. I recommend you wait till you have revenue coming in. But the thing to remember is a business entity does not legitimize your business. As a notary, you're probably free to operate right away. Nobody cares if you're an LLC or a corporation or an S corporation or whatever. What it does, what the reason those entities exist is to protect your assets, your personal assets, from your company assets in case you get sued. And there's also some tax benefits. So seek the advice where that would matter. Lawyers and tax advisors on whether or not it makes sense for you. Next up, Valerie says, regarding a subordination agreement on the second loan, the new lender will always be placed in the first position. Is that correct? And then, oops, hold on. And then Carol mentions that if the lender fails to include the subordination agreement in the package, it will hold up escrow. So as an NSA, how do we know what is supposed to be there and what do we look for? Carol, since she mentions you, I'll let you go.
Do you want me? Yeah. Subordination agreements are basically a letter from a secondary lender. Let's say you have a first and a second on a home. They are getting a brand new first on the home, so you have a new lender coming in and taking over first position, which of course gives them a big advantage if anything happens on a foreclosure or a house loss, fire, or whatever. Okay, so now you've got this person that's in second place, and they usually have a much smaller loan. And so what they have to do is they have to write a permission letter. It's called a subordination agreement. And this permission letter says, I will remain in second place, has to be recorded. And it says to the, I think it has to be recorded. Some of them are. And then what it's telling is the lender that's going into first place, you're safe. You get to stay in first place. I don't want to argue with you. I will stay in second place. And one of the ways that we can determine that if we need that or not, it's really up to title to do it, but I have done this a few times, found out that they forgot, didn't get it, and it will hold up escrow, is if you see that there is a second on the property, if they make that aware, and you find out there is a second or somebody says something to you, you want to look for that subordination agreement or ask if it's been provided already. Usually it will never go through if the lender doesn't have it in their hands. But there are sometimes there are things missing from a package, and if you bring their attention to it, it's greatly appreciated. It's happened to me a couple times over the years where they didn't have it, nobody was aware of it, and it would have held up recording. Yeah, so from a very practical standpoint, guys, there is not a burden on you as the signing agent to know that should be there and that it's not. It's a way to add extra value and really be a hero for your clients if you notice it's not. Exactly. But they're not expecting you to know what should be there and what shouldn't. That is not our burden to bear. So that comes with experience. Exactly. And time. Comes with experience. Soon you'll start seeing on their credit report. You'll see the mortgage they're paying off, and then there'll be this other Wells Fargo for $33,000. And you're like, well. So, you start to think, is that a car or is that a second mortgage? But it'll say mortgage. So you're like, that's pretty small for a mortgage. I wonder if there's a second on here. And you'll think little triggers that'll pop out for you. But don't stress about it in the beginning. If you happen to catch it, you will be a hero to your customer. They love you when you find missing stuff. But you don't have to stress out about it. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about, Carol, if it's all right with you before we move on, they're talking about the debt resolutions again in the chat window. And I know we talked about this last week, guys. So if you want to talk about it or hear our in-depth description and about it, it's posted on my YouTube page. Carol, I'm not sure if I sent you the link, but I'll get that over to you so you can post it as well. But it's definitely on my YouTube. And the opinions vary on debt resolutions. One of the biggest concerns that people have is they think that because there's verbiage in there that says that you as the notary are representative of the law firm or the company that is doing the debt resolution, that there's some sort of legal battle that might
do because of that. Now, I don't know I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not advising you legally, but I've talked to lawyers about this. And basically all that is stating is that you're an independent contractor representing that company, which is the same exact thing we do as a loan signing agent. So there's not necessarily any legal concern there. So from that angle, there's not a whole lot to stress out and worry about. If you want to pursue it and find out from your own legal advisors, I recommend you do that before you take them. The other concern that people have is that you look at these deals and these transactions and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to you, so you don't feel comfortable doing them. If you don't feel comfortable doing them because you don't like the situation people are in or the decisions they're making to get themselves out of it, then don't do them. If you can't do it without judgment, just avoid them. If you can, and if you want to be a part of that, like Carol, what was the name of that company you said that does a really good job with them?
Sunshine Signing Connection. They have legitimate. They're pretty good. I have a lot of students that do them. Yeah.
So there's a way to make it work if you want it to work, and if you don't want it to work, there's a way that you can justify that for yourself as well. As far as price point goes, I've seen them as low as $30. That's not enough for me. I think the $50 to $75 is pretty much a fair going rate right now.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Next.
And I will say I did copy something. I didn't write it or gather it, but I did get something off of Facebook a week or so ago that a fellow by the name of Robert Owens posted on his Facebook group, Notaries and Notary Signing Agents, and it was very informative about debt resolutions, and it's a good thing to have. If anybody wants it, I made a copy of it. Just send me an email, Notary2Pro@gmail, and I'll shoot you a copy.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you don't mind sending that over to me, Carol, too, maybe I can help send that out. Thank you. All right. I made a mistake on an acknowledgement. Do I need to have the borrower initial the correction? So if you're talking about your notary block, if you make a mistake on your portion of the notary acknowledgement, you can correct it with a single line cross through, and then you initial it, and the borrower or the signer does not have to initial it.
And this is something that's very important, very, very important, that most notaries do not know, especially when they're new. The notarial certificate belongs to you. No human being on earth can make changes to that notarial certificate. They cannot correct the venue. They cannot correct the date. They can't add anything. They can't cross through anything. That is yours. If there is an error on it, it's up to you to make the correction and initial it or do whatever you have to do to complete it. Always remember that, because let's say you make a mistake on one and somebody calls you, I don't care if it's the escrow officer, and they say to you, there's a mistake on here and I need to add something or I need to change something. No, it's against the law. They can't do that. It's your certificate. It's up to you to correct it.
It's a legal document. Now that's going to be a little bit of a pain in the rear sometimes too, because the weirdest date, if they can't read the date correctly, if one little misspelling, sometimes they'll call you in to fix that because they can't do it. They just can't, even if it's just a quick little.
But they will.
Quick little initial. Well, some of them do.
Some of them do, and if they do it once, they're going to do it twice, and they're going to break the law. And I don't like that.
All right, tax forms in a seller's package. Very important. Oh, this one is from you. If they don't understand the tax questions on documents for a seller's package, what do they do?
Well, this is something that I really stress when I have students who are doing purchases. These tax forms are very, very important. Here in California, we have a whole booklet. It's called the 563. And I mean, it's like 20 pages or more. They're asking questions, and some of them are very detailed questions. And everything has to do with how much capital gains the IRS is going to get them for. So if I get a seller in front of me and they don't know how to answer that, they go, gee, I'm not sure, I don't remember. What I do, I haven't gotten in trouble for it yet after all these years, is I encourage them to take it home with them. I tell them, get a hold of your tax attorney, your accountant, whoever helps you with your taxes. Get whatever advice you need to get to fill this form in and make sure that those figures are correct. Because if they're not, they can very much influence the capital gains taxes that you're charged. And try correcting something with the IRS. It just isn't.
It's a pain in the butt, yep.
And then I tell them they have to be responsible for getting this to escrow, title, whatever, wherever it has to go, ASAP. If it means that they have to pay for FedEx or drive it someplace, they have to do it very fast, but it's absolutely to their benefit not to just put figures in that they aren't familiar with or that they're not feeling right about.
Excellent. Delmy asks a great question. I'd like to talk about this because I know there's a big varied opinion on this. Delmy says, I declined to notarize a grant deed. The ID name was Josefina Pina Garcia, 3 different names. The grant deed document was just Josefina Garcia. Was I right?
And the ID was?
Josefina Pina Garcia. Had her middle name.
As long as it's more on the identification, then you're good. Let's say that the grant deed was Joseph, Pina Garcia, whatever, Jr.
Yeah.
Okay, but the ID didn't have the junior on it. Now you got a problem. Or if it had all 3 names on the driver's license, which he said it did, and not that many names on the document, then you're okay. If it's vice versa, then you're not okay. If there's more names on the document than there is on the identification, then you're not. And I think I saw something from Chrissy. Chrissy, are you on with us?
Can we before we do that, is it about this one or is it a different one?
No, she's a legal brain.
Gotcha.
She'll tell us if she's still on with us. I saw that she was there for a few minutes. But basically, that's what I teach. If it's more on the document than is on the identification, then you can't do this. Now you've got to start talking about AKA statements and that kind of thing.
Or backup identification.
Yeah, and a big one is when a woman takes title to a property in her maiden name and never changes it when she gets married, and now she's got identification that's her married name and her maiden name is on the documents. Those kinds of things are real problems, and they have to be addressed.
Yep. And luckily, those are usually a lot more obvious. So, Delmy, in your particular question, you could have notarized that. There's going to be a lot of documents, especially in general notary work, where the middle names are not used. So keep that in mind for next time. And then, Valerie, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question about ID, that's totally fine.
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering, with the issues that come up with the identification on our end when we're at the end of the process, when somebody is buying or selling or refining, whatever, aren't they providing their ID up front? Isn't somebody asking to see that? And aren't they matching the documentation with their ID, and then we're just finalizing it in the end?
Valerie, what have I told you about applying logic to this industry? You would absolutely think, because in the very beginning they provide either the loan officer or whoever the originator is, they'll provide the driver's license. It will go through underwriting. They will pull their credit. It will get validated through the government security checks, and you will still get documents that are incorrect. And it happens a lot.
All the time.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you.
So that's why I start in the very beginning with my journal, because it gets, obviously I'm looking at the ID, I'm checking it, and then I can check. And what you also have to check is, because the title company drafts their own version of their documents, and then they combine that with the lender's documents. And sometimes those don't even match. And there's a human being literally putting those together. So I use that time at the journal just to make sure everything's matched up. And if it's not, Worst case scenario, you call the closing agent and get some clarity and permission on what they can do. But having said that, a lot of times closing agents will tell you to proceed because the lender says it's okay, but it's still not legal for you to notarize a document. So you have to know what you can and can't do. That's why I urge you just to be an expert on this stuff in your state.
Did I talk about last week? I don't remember if I did, about the couple that we went to the home where the two women were sitting at the table and I was looking for the husband.
No.
I didn't tell you. Everybody will get a kick out of this one. We went to this house, really nice lady, took us into the dining room. There's another friend of hers or something, a woman sitting there, and we're waiting for the husband. And finally, 5 minutes. And I said, well, is your husband here? Is he coming soon? And the other woman at the table said, well, I'm him. She had a sex change. And she went from Jonathan to Jennifer or something like this. And I'm like, are you kidding? Because all the documents were Jonathan.
Hold on one second, Carol. I got somebody who's talking on the phone. I'm going to mute everybody here.
This is her husband.
Okay, sorry, Carol. You have to unmute yourself. Carol, are you there? Oh, she's frozen too. All right, well, I'll ride solo until she gets back. We'll hear the rest of that story. Okay, what's a cash purchase? This is one of the ones that Carol gets asked a lot too. A cash purchase is just when somebody is purchasing real estate and not using a mortgage to do so. That means they are paying cash for the entire transaction. There is still documents that have to be signed. One of those may or may not be a deed of trust or a mortgage, not a grant deed or a warranty deed or something like that. There are different situations that may require that. Sometimes they don't even have to sign a deed to get it recorded into their name. So that's relatively simple. You'll get actually quite a few of these. The packages are super small, maybe 20 to 30 pages, depending on the title company. And I still charge anywhere from $100 to $125 for this. And that's kind of the going rate when you're working escrow direct. Now, when you're working with signing companies, you might see they only pay you 30 or 40 bucks for these because they're so small. The reason I stick to my guns on my fee structure on this is it's a cash deal. Sometimes this is millions of dollars in cash too. I think my biggest one was $1.2 million paid cash for his house. Some of them are $300,000 or $400,000, and they're walking in with cashier's checks, or maybe they wired the money. But when you're dropping that kind of coin, they're analyzing the settlement statement and they're going through it. They're making sure all the fees are correct because that's cash literally out of their pocket. So some of those signings can still take 30 or 40 minutes, but mostly it's 15 to 20. When I'm brand new, how do I get business? Great question. When you're brand spanking new, number one, after you get I'll just go through my 5 phases. Phase 1, you have to become a notary, which I assume you've already done. Phase 2 is get your certification as a loan signing agent. Phase 3 is you figure everything else out. This is your training for the loan documents, getting your script down, knowing the etiquette about where to park your car, where to sit at the table, how to get your flow going, how to communicate if you're going to be late, how to print documents. All of that, the meat of your business is happening in phase 3. What you're asking about is phase 4, how to get business. The first thing you want to do is start signing up with signing companies. Signing companies are a little more forgiving in the beginning when you make errors or if you have questions. They also have the volume. They are basically you on a bigger version. They've gone out, they built relationships with escrow officers or lenders, and they have the business and they just farm it out to you. So you want to sign up with as many of those as possible. Right now we're recommending 50 to 100 different signing companies. And of course you can find a huge master list of about 600 or 800 of those on notaryrotary.com. after that, after you get your feet wet, you've got a little bit of flow, you've got some experience, and you really speak to it, then you start building relationships with escrow officers. And one thing I didn't mention earlier when we had the escrow conversation, guys, was networking events. Networking events are huge for escrow officers. They're always out there hustling. They're always trying to meet real estate agents and other escrow managers at other companies in case they want to transition. You know, they're looking to advance their careers too. They love connecting at those, and that gives you an opportunity to show your personality and connect again on a different level than just sending an email or popping into a visit or an office. New notary and just getting my feet wet with in-person marketing. What is your absolute best suggestion for introducing yourself to your local business and building a relationship in your first 2-minute introduction conversation? This could go 2 different directions. If you're absolutely cold, I recommend that you have an established, what they call like an elevator speech, just about what it is and the value that you bring. Get creative with this. Don't say, yeah, I'm a notary and I make sure I sign documents correctly. You know, paint a picture for them. I help you be a hero to your customers so they don't have to fight traffic. And I take the loan documents right to their home or office so they can sign documents, and then I guarantee I get them back to your office right afterwards. That kind of stuff that pops and gets their attention. You solve a problem, or you present a problem and you fix a problem, all in that first little 30 seconds. The other one is when you have a chance to warm it up. Like I talked about already before in this call, is warm it up, do a little bit of research, know something about them, ask them what's going on with them. People get excited when they get to talk about themselves, and if all you do is listen, because very few people do, they form that connection in their mind. All right. Oh, good question. Are escrow payments daily? If you're asking if you get paid the same day you do the work, usually not. You get paid several different ways as an escrow officer. Guys, I'm going to mute everybody again. Sorry. Got some background noise again. You can get paid out of the file where you're a line item on the actual closing statement. And as soon as that transaction closes, the closing agent will actually cut a check and mail it to you. Sometimes that is the same day, and it takes a couple of days to mail out to you. Sorry, guys, they're just setting up the bar over here, so there's some background noise. And then other times, you're going to have a relationship with the escrow company or the lender, and they are going to have like a contract rate. So they'll agree to pay you this much per file or this much per day, and then you bill them either weekly or monthly, depending on the relationship, and then they cut you a check, usually out of their corporate office. With signing companies, that's totally different. You're kind of up to whatever their pay structure is. Some signing companies pay, I heard one pays daily, so they'll just pay you right when you do the signing. I don't know who that is, though. Some of them do weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And then some are 45 to 90 days out. They usually should communicate what their pay schedule is before you sign up or before you get business. Do I recommend signing companies to gain experience? I already answered that, Judith. Yes, absolutely. Signing companies are highly recommended to sharpen your teeth and get your feet wet. Escrow officers, if you don't have the confidence level, they're going to be able to sense that. When I first started, I had the confidence level because I did one and I got paid $150 and I wanted more. I just knew that's what I was going to do. So there was no, I've never had an escrow officer say, well, how much experience do you have? I present myself in such a way that it doesn't even occur to them that I'm not experienced. Oh, Carol, you back? You're on mute if you're talking.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep, welcome back. All right, this
we lose power here all the time, and it drives us. It'll go off for 20 seconds, like 5 times a day.
Well, it was a lot longer than 20 seconds this time. Welcome back.
Yeah, it was.
All right, this one says, I would like to know if writing articles or blog posts would be problematic in terms of practicing law without a license for notaries? Marianne asked that. I'll answer this as soon as the banging stops. All right. So it depends on what you're writing about. If you are giving advice, legal advice in your article, you might run into some hot water. However, if you're doing some general guidelines about the importance of notarization, like stay in your lane kind of thing, or what to look for in a good notary, or just the fact that mobile notaries even exist and can make their lives easier, those types of articles and blog posts are going to be fine. If you write anything that kind of even walks the line of giving legal advice, either modify it or put a disclaimer. This is not legal advice. I am not an attorney. If you would like to seek legal advice, please consult an attorney or something like along those lines. I don't recommend you get in the gray area of that at all. There is plenty to write about in our lane that I would recommend you start with. Any input on that, Carol?
No, I agree with you. You got to be very careful if you start putting things out there, because people believe what's in writing. They just do.
And guys, you know how it is. You read one line of a paragraph and you make your mind up about the entire paragraph of what it says. So there's lots of room for misinterpretation. So just be cautious with it. Okay, Patricia asks a great question here. Transitioning from part-time to doing this full-time. How do you exit your job? Carol, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I've seen this so many times. I have students who'll come in and they say, well, I have a full-time job, but I really want to get away from it. I'm tired of this corporate thing, the 9 to 5, all this kind of stuff. And for most people, it takes at least 6 months. But every once in a while, I'll get an email or a phone call from one of my students, and they'll say, I can't believe it, but I just quit my job because I'm ready to go full-time. It's hard work. And one of the things that I always suggest is, and you may disagree with, we haven't talked about this. I tell people that do work full-time, you don't have to tell people that. I don't want anybody ever lying to anyone, and this might be lying by omission. But if you tell people when you start signing up with signing services, title companies, if you tell them right off the bat that you work full-time, you're only available, certain hours of certain days, most of the time you're not going to make it to their database. They just don't want to, they don't know you. But once you do take a couple of signings and you show them what you're all about, it doesn't take much to show that you excel, that you know what you're doing, and that you're at the top of your game. Then you become the go-to person. That's when you start opening them up and letting them know, my best days are for work or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm available, But I always advise my students, don't call them up and then say I work full time. So you can only call me after 6 o'clock at night. It just doesn't work. And if they get a call for some time when they're working, tell them you're booked. You're booked with your job. But
no, that's exactly it. Carol, I totally agree with you guys. If you start the conversation of, well, I'm booked till 5 and then I have family time starting at 7, so I can basically do signings at 6. And I've literally heard this. That's great. The beautiful thing about this business is you can structure it however you want, but you are basically putting yourself out of business before you even start business. If you tell people that, or if you say, well, I got to watch my kid from 8 to 3 and then my husband comes home so I can be at a signing. But if they don't care about the story, don't have the story. Just like Carol said, whatever you've got going on, we've all got it, but you're always booked. Yep, I'm booked. If they call you for a noon appointment, but you work till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to say, you know what, I'm already booked at 12, but I could be to them by 4 p.m. Would that work for them? You can always try to renegotiate, but you never give the story, the background about why you're booked. You just tell them that you're booked. You want to, number one, that makes it look like you're desirable and other people are utilizing your services, and it makes you look like a professional. The other thing is, guys, for me, if you're not ready to do signings during the day, like if you don't have a flexible schedule with your day job that allows you to do that, you're probably not ready to go escrow direct. You should be focusing on signing companies, and you sign up with 100 of them, so you increase the odds of you getting a signing at a time that you can take it. Because escrow officers have very little tolerance for no. If you say no too many times, they're going to stop calling you. So you either don't solicit their services until you're ready, or you have a team that you can refer or hire out to do the signings that you can't get to.
I think, too, it's extremely important for you to know what your expenditures are, what are your bills, what do you need to make every month, because if you've got signings that are only going to pay half of that, you need to rethink going full-time.
Yeah,
until you know for sure. I've been turning down this company. It's a certain time of the day because I've been working, and you have to be prepared if you are going to drop everything and go full-time. Don't find yourself being able to pay half your bills. You need to be very confident that you're going to be able to make up that money.
And that's what makes it such a personal decision. It's hard to say, yeah, you can go full-time at 3 months, because we all have our own income needs.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own, the desire to make a certain amount of money is understandable. I want to make $20,000 a month. But what do you need to replace your income now? When you start looking about income replacement, that makes it a little more realistic. And you might be able to save up enough money in your savings to where you can make that transition maybe a little faster, or you hit it. Maybe you're just clicking and you meet the right person at the right time. That's one thing about this, guys. One person that you meet can change everything. So as soon as you hit that threshold, whatever it is for you, for some of us, we can survive on $2,000 a month. We love making more, but our bills are $2,000. For some, our expenses are $10,000 a month, so we got to make $15,000 a month before we can make the transition. So it's a very personal decision. Now, we only have time for one more question, and I want to take Iris's question because it's in the presentation a little further down the road, but she's talking about attorney states. So Iris says, can you share some benefits to share with attorneys when you're in an attorney state, especially when the office generally has notaries conduct their closing? Is it better to establish relationships with the title company instead? And I've got some feedback on this one. Carol, you want me to take this one first?
Yeah, I have a lot of students from places like Georgia, South Carolina, and the thing is, they have a lot less competition because notaries don't think about doing signings there because of the fact that it's an attorney state. But one of the things, and in fact, this is something I did want to talk about because I get this question a lot. Mm-hmm. You do not get signings because the property is in your state, or the lender is in your state, or the title company is in your state. It's the people. People are so transient in this country that even though you're in an attorney state, I have people in Georgia just doing great. You're busy because they can handle any property that's outside of the state. And the way people move around, in fact, my son lived in Georgia for a year. He had been transferred there, but his home was in Arizona. So you don't really have to worry too much about even dealing with the attorneys. What I do advise my students is, just make sure that you're not taking any property that's within the state, because you can handle all of these other things. And title companies, I think, is a good place to start. Signing services are great, but that's what my experience with my students that are in attorney states has told me.
Fantastic. So here's some additional input on this as well, because obviously I get this question a lot, and I've dove in, I've asked attorneys, I've asked what the rules are. The rules in those attorney states are basically that an attorney must be present or involved in the closing of a real estate transaction in those states. The key words there is present and involved for a closing. It's important to note that as a signing agent, you are not the closing agent. You are a gatherer of signatures. So signing agents actually still prevail and thrive in attorney states because our responsibility is not the transferring of money and funds and the recording of documents. That's closing a transaction. We are gathering signatures. So even in properties that are in those states, you are still able to perform the signings from a legal interpretation standpoint. The problem with legal interpretation is that everybody has their own on it. So a lot of attorneys that specialize in real estate, they already know they can use signing agents, and they do use signing agents. So those are great connections for you, great for networking. Attorneys do a lot of networking. You can also get referred through the title connections because they all have their favorite closing attorneys. Even real estate agents have their favorite closing attorneys that they work with. So there's lots of room to navigate that.
Have you ever handled out-of-state closings in Arizona, Bill, where the attorney calls in,
all the
talks
time,
for
yeah.
5 minutes, and hangs up, and their bill is $400?
Yeah, that's what's kind of cool about that too. And you'll actually see it even in like Georgia. I see it a lot, like where the attorney's like, "I'm just going to sit on the phone. I'll be here for any questions." They have to be present or involved in the closing. So to them, that's the interpretation of that, guys. To give you just kind of the opposite of it, in states on the western side, we have escrow officers as closing agents. In attorney states, they use attorneys as closing agents. The role that they play is actually very similar. The closing, the money everybody gets paid who's supposed to get paid. They record the documents. It's just a different title and a different role. We get to represent those closing agents as independent contractors and signing agents. What's cool about that, if you're in an attorney state, just like Carol said, there's a lot less competition because people read that and they think, oh, I can't do it, so I'm not going to. It's an attorney state. Attorney has to close this loan. And they are absolutely correct. An attorney must close that loan, but you can gather the signatures and still participate as the signing agent. So there's a lot of opportunity for you out there. Any other questions?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you what happened when we went to that table? And
You know
the
what,
husband
Carol?
was...
Can we save that for next time? Because we are way over time. We're already way past 10.
Oh, we are. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Carol, thank you again for your time and all your infinite wisdom. I really appreciate it. I think this is awesome. And guys, we really appreciate your feedback. So when we get these things posted to YouTube, if you can watch it, comment on it, let us know how we can help. And watch out for those emails and reply to them so we can get your questions. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care, Bill.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Everybody else have a great...
Thank you.